Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Borison, and I'm the editor of Your Teen Media. And most importantly, for this discussion, I'm the mother of 5. One of the core strengths of our Cleveland Jewish community is its commitment to caring and providing for others. And to that end, the Jewish Federation of Cleveland is creating a platform through these webinars to help people understand the impact of COVID-19 on our community. We want you to have the chance to ask questions and directly to experts. Last Tuesday, we hosted a webinar with Dr. Robert Salata to understand how to care for someone with the coronavirus. And today, we are proud to host Jeffrey Lox, Executive Director of Bellefaire JCB, and Dr. Suzanne Schneps to talk about helping kids manage today's anxiety. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Lox, Director of Bellefaire JCB. Bellefaire is a federation agency and is among the nation's largest, most experienced child service agencies. Mr. Lox has been with Bellefaire since 1998 and holds a master's degree in social service administration with a concentration in child and adolescent mental health from the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences at Case Western Reserve University. Dr. Schneps is a clinical psychologist who has been in practice over 30 years. Prior to her clinical experience, she trained as an elementary school teacher and special educator. Dr. Schneps received her PhD from Case Western Reserve University also. She has a thriving private practice and helps many in our community. I can't imagine two more qualified individuals to present to us today. We are so grateful to have both of you joining us. I will start out by asking a series of questions to our presenters based on what we've heard from individuals in the community. Following their remarks, we'll take questions from you, the audience. Please type your questions in the Q&A box. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see Q&A. Just click on that and add your questions. When you ask your question, please include the age of your child so that we can tailor the response. So we're going to start right now with this overwhelming sense of anxiety that we're all living with. Jeff and Suzanne, this is not an inappropriate response to what's going on right now, but it impacts us as parents in such a challenging way. How do we first deal with our own anxiety?
So if I could give one takeaway from this webinar, it's actually going to be the following. It turns out that our brains have a unique way of working, and we turn off our own fear in our brain by actually doing an act of kindness. So one of the great things that we could do to reduce anxiety is to do something to be kind, to help somebody else. We can encourage our children to do that. We can do that. We can write a note to a first responder. They can text a friend that just maybe hasn't always been the most well-received kid at school. We could send even, ask to send a card or a call to somebody that's older. By doing something kind, we actually help our own anxiety. And it's just a great thing that we all need to know.
Beautiful. Jeff?
Hi, Sue. Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for having me. I was going to start with just some general principles as well. First of all, I think you said it. We're in unusual times, and we should all start. One good anxiety management tool is to just acknowledge that. I think we want to tell ourselves everything's okay or everything's normal or I should feel normal by now. And the truth is, a good start to managing anxiety is to acknowledge that, yes, everything is different right now. Anxieties are high, and we are living in a different time. I think the other principle is it's okay to acknowledge when we're having anxiety. So I will model such by saying, in my head, while we were muted, I was saying, don't touch your face, they won't listen to you. And for God's sakes, please don't sneeze. So my anxiety was about getting through this next hour. And lastly, I'll say anxiety in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's actually a warning system. It's our body saying, things are too much for you right now. It's time to take stock and then do things that work to help us kind of feel more equilibrium. So the other thing that we've been talking with kids about here at Bellefaire, and I've been talking with people in my life about, is the anxiety in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's actually how we survived the dinosaurs, right? It's that uh-oh feeling that says, I need to do something different for myself right now.
So it's okay to feel anxious right now, but it is not healthy for our kids to be surrounded by anxiety. And so they're feeling anxious and we're feeling anxious, and we can acknowledge that anxiety, but then are there tips for things to actually like practically reduce that anxiety?
You bet. You bet. Can you hear me?
Yeah, give us.
Okay. So let's start with just the basics. And this is really the building blocks of all mental health, not just anxiety. Eat right, sleep right, get some exercise. So they sound very simple, but they're very, very practical tools for helping our body get back to that equilibrium. And so, everybody on Instagram's baking right now. Everybody's bemoaning lack of exercise. The gyms are closed. And certainly when we're all anxious and worried, sleep is disturbed. But we could actually help our kids by helping manage our own anxiety by paying attention to, as best we can, nutrition, sleep, exercise, just as the building blocks of basic mental health.
So the really big challenge as a parent is that our kids feel all of our anxiety. And so they read between all of the lines of what's happening. So it becomes kind of a challenge of, yes, I'm anxious, but I want you to be able to manage and not sense that I am. So showing as a parent that you are doing as much modeling as you can of trying to have some kind of a routine, trying to have some kind of a plan of how the day is going to go, helps your kids. I think the other piece is kids can't handle easily listening to our parental anxiety. And you need to recognize that needs to go to a friend or to a spouse or to a sister, but they can't really listen on and on about what's making us as adults anxious. That only increases their anxiety. They want to see that we're going to figure it out. And that becomes an important message, particularly the younger the kid.
So they want us to reassure them, right? Like that's our role in their lives, that we say to them, everything's going to be okay.
But well, I don't think we want to say everything's going to be okay. Right. I think we want to say, in my opinion, Jeff, you might disagree. I think we want to say, in our family, we're going to be honest. If there's something that's a problem or somebody that we are concerned about, we promise you we're going to tell you. And we're going to give you the whole story, so that if we're not telling you, everybody must be reasonably okay. But we don't want to pretend like nothing could happen. That would be giving a false sense. Jeff, what do you think?
I totally agree with Suzanne, and I would add to that, the other thing we want to get comfortable saying, I don't know. And it's really, when we're trying to reassure kids, I think our inclination is to act like it'll all be okay, we've got it figured out. And I think there are lots of situations in life, and this is certainly one of them, where we have to model being comfortable with, I don't know. What do we do beyond that sentence, though? So we have to get comfortable saying, I don't know. For some, the next sentence is, but I hope everything's going to be okay. Or here's the things that I look to in the world that help me hope it's going to be okay. Or depending on the age of the kids, I don't know. Let's research that together. For older kids who are worried about real practical, researchable things, I think it's okay to acknowledge, I don't know. You want to spend time reading about that. They may say, no, thanks, I'm good. But at least it's another, what do we say after I don't know? And what I've been counseling parents to think about is all of those other questions that kids ask, where the uncomfortable truth is we don't know, about death. is the other place this comes up sometimes, is people question, how do I talk to my kids about death? And a lot of the answer is, I don't know. And here's what I do when I don't know something. I hope, or I pray, or I learn about it, or I get support from my friends. So telling the truth and being okay with I don't know.
I think this raises, though, a really key question, since we have no idea who our audience is here, all the way from the parent of the 2-year-old to the 18-year-old.
Right.
I think the piece that I would just want to add is, for our little friends, you know, those 4 and under, maybe 5, depending on who your kid is, I don't know makes them even more anxious.
Agreed.
So with our little people, maybe the best answer is to say, that's a really good question. I'm going to look into it and get you an answer, because I don't know makes them even more anxious, and they're at a different point. And I think what we need to keep in mind, and Jeff and I are going to try to do that, is how to respond developmentally to asking each question.
Okay, that's perfect, and very tough for you two, because you're trying to cover the span, and these are questions, whether people are on the call with all these ages, these are questions that everyone's having right now, no matter the age of their kid. So when I asked people, and some of the people were saying that, you know, some of the kids are very casual about this whole thing. It may not have touched them too closely, and so the parents are frustrated with how relaxed they are about bumping into a friend casually or doing things that they would prefer in this social distancing space. There's other kids who are reacting the other way, who don't want to go outside because they're afraid they'll catch it. So, and you might have both of those in one family. What do you do?
Well, I feel like this is the softball question for a kid therapist, because the answer here is always, you're going to respond to the kid that's in front of you. If the kid's not anxious enough, that's probably your worry. And you certainly I wouldn't advise you to make the child more anxious. And the child who is over anxious, you're going to respond very differently. And again, good parenting is skillful use of self, right? A lot of the times we get it right, and a lot of the times we get it wrong. And I say it takes a lot. It really, kids are incredibly resilient. We can mess it up a lot of the time, and kids still turn out okay. And so respond to the kid that's in front of you, right? And also know that you're bringing your own anxiety right to the table. And so you're upset that the kid's not anxious enough. It's okay. Deal with where the kid is, and you'll deal with your stuff separately.
I think that what becomes complicated with that is the kid that is not taking this seriously. I keep having phone calls about, what am I supposed to do? They're engaging in blah, blah, blah. You know, they think that they can go out, and they've left, and they say weren't supposed to. And what is so challenging right now is, whatever style of parenting that you kind of had is kind of getting tested. And some of the rules that you had, some of them we got to get rid of right now because it's not that important, but it's stressing what the important and significant ones. So I think that with the person that is the kid, and these tend to be the teens, who are not taking it seriously enough, I think they need information, and I think they need some facts, because facts are what give us a sense of why we should be acting, how we are acting. And with the teens, they're the ones that need those facts. The younger kids are more likely to respond to parenting suggestions than as they get older.
especially with the group of teens who aren't anxious enough or not taking it seriously. I know the other thing we've been hearing from a lot of parents is we've got a real keeping up with the Joneses situation. And so because of social media, because of fantastic technology like we're using, your teen might be aware that some other teens' rules are different than theirs. And I know that this is causing a tremendous amount of stress on families because their kids are saying, Johnny gets to do this, Susie gets to do this. And it's absolutely an additional challenge.
It's the age-old thing that we all heard, which was, we don't really care what the Smiths are doing.
Yes,
this is
right.
what we're doing in our family.
Right,
and it,
right.
you know, it gets really paramount at this time.
In our house, it was, your last name is not X. Whatever X was, that is not your last name.
Okay, one more question under the general category of anxiety. So there's a lot of news, and it could be 24/7 of watching the news. And again, Jeff, to your point, you have to know the kid who's in front of you. Is it recommended to encourage kids that more anxiety is being created by watching the news to step away from it?
I think that's good advice for everybody, adults too, is to, if dependent on your reaction to the news, if you can use news as a source of information that actually, to Suzanne's point, facts help us with anxiety. So if that's how you're using the news, I think it's great. And if kids can do that, especially if they can talk about it with you, or amongst themselves. So that's great. But even people who are using it factually, I think we have got to set limits for ourselves. There's so much information coming at us. Even in non-COVID-19 days, there's just a lot of information, and giving ourselves information breaks is I think, a good plan.
I think the concern becomes, there are people, if I answer question and learn question 1, it leads to question 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then that one leads to 75 more, and it's helping people put a lid on it, which means for many people putting a lid on what they're watching and what they're learning.
So all of that, if we look a little bit to the older teens and the college kids who are home now, it's very hard to mandate anything. So how do you encourage parents to talk to their adolescents and older kids to suggest these things, or what's the language?
Well, I think that the language is first. We want to, if we're talking the college kids, which I think are really the group we're having the greatest challenge with. They had to come home. They didn't want to come home. They're used to tremendous freedom. They're used to engaging in things that, you know, we kind of turn our head from. Sometimes at one point yesterday, I said, well, maybe we should just rotate and take some of them and put them in a, you know, different household, because it's getting so incredibly tense and you've all been safe. I think it's listening to them. What they need is to be listened to. What do they think? And to have, what they will often say is, nobody's respecting the fact that I lived independently, you know, for 6 months. I got it done. I took care of myself. It doesn't really matter that my laundry isn't done every single day. I still had clean enough clothes. I looked okay. It's listening a little bit to them. And I think the key is to try to hear what they have to say and then to be able to speak. What do you think, Jeff?
No, I agree. I think it's balanced with, it's okay to have limits. So just like when young people come home on break, you can acknowledge their independence. They manage their life. As Suzanne says, maybe they had dirty underwear, but they manage their life, right? But they are back under your roof. And so I think it is a balance of being able to acknowledge, I understand when you're in other settings, you have more independence. There are some hard limits under my roof, under our house. And I think for me, I'm trying to help parents liken it to what happens on summer break when some young people come back. That it's true then also, they've lived a whole year with different rules for different settings. And I think, again, a thoughtful conversation that takes their opinions and what's going on with them into account, but also says, end of the day, in this setting, there are some hard lines.
And I think what becomes important is ensuring that you're picking the right rules.
Absolutely.
And you know, no matter what we say, the most important piece is always safety first. And so we need to really stress what are the safety rules. And if it means being somewhat lax on manners at the dinner table, that's okay, because safety is so crucial right now.
I think that's a really good point. The metaphor I give parents all the time is if you can turn off your heart momentarily and think like a landlord, right? There are hard lines when you're the landlord, but really what goes on in the confines of your own apartment, your landlord is not harping at you about dirty laundry, right? But if you are smoking in the house and going to fall asleep and burn everybody to the ground, the landlord does care about that. So I try and give parents that metaphor for young adults who they find back under that roof. Sometimes you have to stop, disengage the heart and be the landlord.
That's great. Someone followed up with a question over here. And this is a tough one. So we're talking about kids who are trying to break the rules, but some kids are responding with being withdrawn and sad and possibly depressed. What do you do at this moment?
I think we want to talk to that kid, and we want to reach out to that kid, because that kid is really, really hurting. And I think we want to not just talk about COVID-19. I think that that's the part that's getting really, really challenging. I'm finding in some of the sessions I have, I'm learning all kinds of cool stuff about some of these kids that we haven't talked about in a long time. And I think that's not the only topic. You know, it's talking about some other things, just like we've all gotten some of those, or at least I have, I'm sure you all have too, some of those absolutely hysterical things that come, you know, in a text or something and make you laugh. Talk about something else. It does not have to just be about COVID-19.
And I think where we're worried about depression, or we know about depression, look, Suzanne's very busy. Bellefaire is very busy. There's lots of help that when kids get to the point where they need to talk to someone outside the family, they can't go to a session, but they certainly can get in front of a screen. And there are lots of resources for kids when it gets to the point that it's not something that we can just listen to at home.
And where's a good place for them to find those resources?
So I bet the Federation has a ongoing list. They could certainly call Bellefaire's helpline is open 24/7. And if it's not something Bellefaire can help with, we'll get them to the appropriate place.
Great, thank you for that. I want to ask you about all of these canceled plans. And I'll tell you that I responded poorly to one of my kids with like, at least we're healthy. I don't recommend that as an answer, but I'm sure that Jeff and Suzanne have some suggestions, because I mean, kids are losing graduation from college, high school, all these moments that we look forward to. And how do we respond to that as a parent?
Okay, so the first thing is exactly what you said. We have to remember, just like we always remember with kids, that they don't have necessarily want to see that priority of at least we're healthy. Right. That's what we're thinking. Yeah. I think we want to empathize. It is really, really disappointing that graduations have already been canceled. Proms have already been canceled. Birthday parties are canceled. Bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. We want to acknowledge that it really is disappointing and how sad we are, and empathize. It's okay. We need to just support where they're coming from and how they're feeling.
Right. I think it's okay. I think our inclination, because we love our kids, our inclination is to solve it. And sometimes just listening, empathizing, and it is heartbreaking. These are experiences that they've been looking forward to for a long time. So I think trying to relieve ourselves of the pressure to solve it on each of these things, and to just, as Suzanne said, empathize.
So we are finding ourselves in a house with more people than we usually live with 24/7. And some of that creates a co-parenting situation that can be challenging. So for people who right now are living in that environment where maybe one spouse was more the primary caregiver and the other one is there all of a sudden to help so much. How do we get through this quarantine time?
Look, I would go back to what I think is my parenting skills 101 for lots of situations. And I would have team meeting. I would be communicating about the particular challenges of in any one household. And I would, in that team meeting, I would be giving each other a whole lot of permission to talk about what's driving each other nuts, to download, again, not in front of the kids. Team meeting does not happen. There might be a family meeting, but parenting team meeting is between parents. And I think I would be extra kind to each other about tolerating you're driving me nuts, and understand that you're giving each other permission to say those things because your goal, as always, is team parenting. And I think if you're express about permission, hey, you can tell me what's driving you nuts, and I'm going to tell you what's driving you nuts. And the other skill that I ask at team meeting, I ask co-parents to give each other permission to tag each other out, that it is not an insult to say, hey, you're losing it, I got this one. And the person tagged out is not to think, oh, they think they can do it better. They've given each other permission. If you're drowning, I'm tagging you out because I'm helping, really. I'm not calling you an ineffective parent. So I really am a firm believer in making explicit that you're going to complain to each other, making explicit that you're going to help each other out, and making explicit the challenges inherent in this new parenting regime.
And, you know, I certainly support all of that. And then I think we have to take it one step further. Our kids hear a lot more than we ever, you know, think they do. And right now, you know, the word that I heard today for the first time actually was boring. Everything is boring. Well, when everything is boring, we're busy trying to listen through the walls. We're trying to hear more things. And I think that there needs to be some honesty. You know, this is challenging. You know, dad always was the primary parent, or mom was always the primary parent, and this is difficult times, and we're working on it. And to lay out there that sometimes it's challenging. I think the other thing is the real importance of an apology. Yeah, I really didn't handle that so well, and mom or dad came back and they really were much more on target. I think our kids really appreciate it when we apologize.
Okay, these are some questions from our audience, and I encourage all of you to go in there into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and ask your questions. Please put how old your children are so we know how to answer the question. So one is, how do I make time for me and my husband when our 5-year-old is always with us and always awake?
Well, my first thought was not a very positive one. It was like, good luck. I think that this is really difficult, and it's almost recognizing that there isn't going to be that much time where you do have it. What there can be is, it happens that the World Health Association came out I guess today or yesterday, and it talked about the importance of one-on-one time with children. And I think that it's maybe with a 5-year-old saying, I'm going to have some one-on-one time with you. Dad's going to have some one-on-one time with you. And then, these are extraordinary times. So about what I'm going to say is, we must remember this is extraordinary times. Maybe they should see an approved video, and you and your husband could go have some time together. These are extraordinary times, and actually their minds will not be fried from a couple of extra videos during this time.
100% agree. I've actually been prescribing screen time so that families can let themselves off the hook, that everybody needs a minute. And if they spend a half hour more on Candy Crush, they'll be okay. I promise they will not be homeless and penniless in the future.
Okay, we are being put in an unusual position. We are now teachers at home. And for some people, it is just starting now, but some people have already been doing it and it's not going so well. And
This is an understatement.
Yeah. What are parents supposed to do in this situation?
Okay. I'm not sure that my response is going to win a lot of favor with the teachers, but I think that our job as parents is to set aside the time that they're supposed to do the work, to ensure that the work is done. Where I'm hearing the biggest questions really recently are that the quality is a little bit in question. And I think we need the support of the teacher when they believe that the quality could be better, and to say, hey, could you take a relook at this and maybe do it a little bit differently. But I think it's setting up the structure, and this is where some of the same rules have to apply. Jeff and I just encouraged a little more screen time, but schools first, just like it always was. Structure really, really makes kids feel safe and makes them feel secure. And we want to keep that same, some degree of structure. And then you can have your screen time.
This is a middle schooler and this child is refusing to do the schoolwork. Then what do you do?
I mean, I think this is the challenge that we're in as parents a lot of the time, which is where our job is to insist on structure. And then based on the child in front of us, there's times that this would be not a great time to battle every day. It just doesn't make sense, and it won't pay off. And we also know we won't win. They can outlast us, right? For me, it's the broccoli battle. If you say you're not getting up from that table until you eat your broccoli, you are now the broccoli cop for the rest of the night. This does not seem like the role we want to be in during this time. So I think we set the limit. We insist upon the structure. And for kids who are refusing, we'll fight the battle tomorrow. And then we'll fight it the next day. And that if we're going to get through this, all of us, in any relatively sane way, because we may be at this a while, it's that any one battle is not going to determine an outcome for our child. And we need to let ourselves off the hook so that when we go to fight the important ones, we're going to win them. Right? And so I would balance those two principles.
Absolutely. And I would ask the middle schooler, how do they see it? What would they suggest? They have a lot of good ideas. Let's not forget our kids have a lot to offer to us. We're always learning from them. Let's see what they have to say as a way to manage it. And let's see how they would understand proceeding ahead to get any of it done.
Okay, this one is, I think all of us can relate to this. We want to bring our best selves into these scenarios, and we don't want to yell, but we often find ourselves yelling. So how do we keep our responses measured when there's so much heightened anxiety attached to us also?
My turn to say good luck.
I think we got to give ourselves a little permission to know that we're not going to be perfect. There's no way to be perfect in a time like this. And that's where, so you'll apologize. You yelled. Wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't your best moment. I call it the ones that we're doing now. I call it, you don't really want to be videotaped as a parent during that time, wasn't your finest. I think you acknowledge it. And I don't think it's a reasonable expectation that there won't be some short tempers.
And then on the preventative side, again, it's back to those building blocks of our own mental health, nutrition, sleep, exercise, to the best. I'm not sure anyone's sleeping real great these days, but to the best we can take care of ourselves. We know that the better we are for ourselves, the better we are for our kids in general. And it's no different during
we're missing a really important word, which may feel like it's a disconnect from this whole experience, but I think it's helpful. we have to have some fun.
Right.
And if we have some fun, we all do better and our kids will do better. And it's thinking about how can you have some fun right now.
That's great. Thank you for the reminder. There are fun moments in this unusual time. So 8 and 10-year-old, and this parent is concerned, what are the signs of anxiety that become diagnosable and something that they should seek outside help for?
Not sleeping at all, not eating at all, any form of self-harm, which would include cutting, pulling hair, pulling out eyebrows, refusing to get out of bed at times, a inability to stop any tantrumy kind of behavior of a 10-year-old, physically acting out. Those would be the things that I would see. But in contrast to, it's okay if they're a little anxious.
Right.
It's an anxious time. Jeff, you want to add to that?
Yeah, the other symptoms I would look for are like headaches, tummy aches, body complaints in kids that don't typically have those kinds of body complaints. And the other one that I think we forget is even an 8 to 10-year-old can say, I'm nervous, I'm worried. So the kid's own self-report is sometimes a symptom. Again, especially if it's a kid who would not describe themselves under other circumstances as nervous or worried or having upsetting thoughts. A kid who self-identifies, who's saying a lot, I'm worried, we'd pay attention to that one also.
I think you brought up a really important symptom, which right now is so challenging, which is the kid that starts to have a physical reaction. You know, I think all of us, every time you have, oh, my throat hurts just a tiny bit, oh my goodness, what does this mean? Or I had a cough, or, you know, for 12 seconds. And I think that those physical ones, you want to, you know, your own kid, and you want to trust in your own judgment that you really do know when there's something more to be concerned about medically. It's that gut sense. It's how I knew that the appendicitis that Jenny had, I knew she wasn't crying, but I knew that we were in trouble. And you have to trust your same gut here, I think.
Okay, this one is about adult children living away, older children, still people that we consider we have to parent, and they've lost their job, they're living away from home, they're worried about paying rent.
I think, again, to the extent it's possible to connect on the phone I can tell you my brothers and my parents and our spouses and all the dogs actually got on screen as well. We after I learned Zoom actually for this meeting, we had a family visit Sunday afternoon using Zoom, and I think connecting in as many ways as people have access to, for those adult children living away.
And then helping them access resources, or they're adults and they need to kind of manage that?
I think when people are really anxious, they need support and help to access those resources. You can become immobilized in your anxiety, and it's okay to offer some help. That's, you know, what I think that they may need at this time.
You may have to endure an extra mother, but you'll live.
Okay, so hopefully, I don't know how we can communicate afterwards, but hopefully we can put out resources for everybody who's on this call for mental health resources and financial resources. And I think I'm going to mention some of it at the end. So stay till the end so you can kind of find out what will potentially help you and your family.
So the one number I know by heart is Bellefaire's intake helpline, and if you'd like it, I'd be happy to give it.
Yeah, please say it.
And I think a second number we want to be sure to put out is the suicide hotline.
Yeah, that's a great thought.
Okay, so we have a slide that shows contact info for Access Cleveland. Okay, I don't know when that's coming on, but there'll be information for you guys. And if you aren't getting something that you need, just call the main number at Federation. I'm sure someone can help you. Okay, so we have time for a few more questions. Parents want to know, in the world of flexibility, are there suggestions that the two of you would make? Okay, so more like flex the screen rules, like you can, you know, you used to have an hour, you can have 2 now, whatever. But it's hard to kind of prioritize in this moment. What are the things that are fixed that we shouldn't bend on, and what are the things that are flexible? And it may vary per family, but there might be some, like Jeff, you've said, sleep, etc.
Right. I would say for me, the only fixed is safety. Right.
I would agree.
That is the safety things are exactly what they've always been. Don't touch the stove, right? Cutting, hurting other people, the safety things, and everything else. We've got wiggle based on the makeup of the family, the character of the family, what's parenting like in the family before COVID-19, everything else has wiggle. What I've told people is when I set up basic parenting rules with parents, I'm never going to tell them the content because it's their house and their kid. We set up the framework and parameters about which battles are we always going to fight with kids, which battles are we never going to fight with kids, which battles depend, and sometimes we're going to fight with kids. And from my perspective, none of that is different. There are always battles, never battles, and sometimes battles, even in the age of COVID-19. And for me, the only always battle is safety.
Anything to add, Suzanne?
Say, I didn't hear you, Sue.
Anything to add?
I think I want to re-emphasize that safety is the only non-negotiable situation. And I think it's, you know, if it makes you feel better, these are different times. These are flexible rules now. And you shouldn't think when we're through with this that we're going to have these rules. We're not. We're going to go back to the regular way. But right now, we're okay with this.
Okay. This one is about teenagers. If the tension was there before, it's not getting better now.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to look the other way from the snarkiness and the insolence and all of the other things. Maybe there's a moment here. Is there an opportunity here?
Yeah. Yes, and so I do think it's important for us because when we're parenting, we're always thinking developmentally. And I know nobody likes to hear this. They're supposed to be insolent. They are supposed to separate from us. Now, I understand it is hyper extended right now because we're all on top of each other. But a little bit of this they are supposed to be doing. It's developmentally normal. On the other hand, I also think it's okay for parents to say, don't talk to me that way. I think it's okay for us to be human and for parents to say, that one really hurt. You know, I've let 17 go because I understand this is tough, but that one hurt me. I think that's okay.
Okay.
So I know that there are several, probably more than several households out there where the snarky comments are reaching a new level of beyond snarky. They're beyond mean and they're totally inappropriate. And of course, these teens don't stop. And the best suggestion at that point is to just say, I need to separate myself from them. And, you know, we need to have a lot of separateness in this house because some of them have been unable to contain themselves. The other piece of it is, which, you know, is a truism, but some of it's their way of expressing their anxiety. They are so anxious that they're not just trying to be independent. They don't know what to do with it and they don't know quite how to express it. So everything is your fault as a parent. And the language is really extraordinarily interesting.
Yeah, our Wi-Fi went down because we have many people using it. And that was apparently my fault.
That's a major crisis. Is it back up?
That was my fault. Okay, so I want to let everybody know that there's free and confidential resources and referral services at Access Jewish Cleveland, and you can visit accessjewishcleveland.org. I think all the panelists can see that in the chat. And there's also a link in there and a phone number. So if you scroll down to the bottom and you see the Q&A, scroll to the right, you'll see chat, click on that, and you'll be able to see those resources. So were there any other questions that we didn't answer? Oh, here is the slide for accessjewishcleveland.org with the phone number. Share that with other people also. If you're hearing of friends and family members who are having struggles, please let them access all of this. There are robust services to access. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. It was amazing. You guys gave so much valuable information. I feel better, and I feel a renewed sense of coming out with my family with a little bit more forgiveness and maybe walking away into my room. So thank you for all of that. Thank you so much to Dr. Schneps and Mr. Lox. I know this has been helpful to me, which I already said, and I hope to many on the call. We appreciate your time and dedication to our community. We will continue with our series this week. On Thursday at 12 p.m., we are hosting a cooking demonstration. If you are looking for something fun to do with your family, please join us in learning to make charoset with our friend from Beit Shan, Cleveland, and with our friends from Beit Shan, Cleveland, and St. Petersburg. Oh, that's cool. Everyone on the call together. We will be posting the invitation on our Facebook page. Finally, the Federation is looking to support you through this challenging time. And that was the slide with Access Cleveland. We have arranged for a therapist from the Jewish Family Service Association to be on call from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. You'll be able to access there. Okay, yeah, I mean, there is something miraculous about this time in the midst of all of this insanity that we are just seeing so many people doing so many wonderful things. And to end with Dr. Suzanne Schneps' comment that one way to reduce our anxiety is to do something kind for someone else. So we can see in these comments that people are already doing that. And there was one more thing to say. Okay. Are we going still? The opportunity for my daughter and I to connect with friends and family near and far. Great. Teens getting along. Oh, snuggling. I'm going to try that one. That hasn't happened, except with my dog. Laundry's excellent. Okay, so thank you. I hope all of you continue to wash your hands, practice social distancing, and stay safe. And we should all have a healthy and happy Pesach. Thank you, everybody.